Welsh Marches, one of the least known and least spoiled parts of Britain, a place away from the tourist trails, where towns are few and far between, where talk in the pub is of the price of cattle feed more than the price of shares, where lambing storms matter more than motorway pile-ups, a grey, green land of clouds, hills and drizzle. Things change slowly here. The Welshpool in Llanfair is a line that runs close to nature. Pheasant and partridge, hare and rabbit, sheep and cattle beside the line, and sometimes on it too. When that happens, the train must stop. It's an agricultural area where people earn their living from the land, and the railway respects that. In fact, it was built as the farmer's line, and even today, it's often known by that name. The 2-foot 6-inch gauge Welshpool and Llanfair light railway was opened in 1903. It was built to link the busy market town of Welshpool in the Severn Valley with the farming community of Llanfair Carinion in the hills 8 miles to the west. For half a century it scarcely seemed to change, moving at the slow, rhythmic pace of the farming people it served. Its only real milestone was a negative one. In 1931, it stopped carrying passengers. Today, the public not only travels on the line once more, its members actually run it, as members of the Welshpool and Llanfair Railway Preservation Company. Ralph Cartwright is the editor of the company's quarterly journal.
It's the members' railway. It's a genuine light railway made under the Act of 1896. And we all feel that we've got a part in the running of it, at least everybody who wants to have a part. And it's a very friendly enterprise.
Most of the hard graft of running the railway is done by volunteers, in their spare time. A lot of it's not particularly glamorous, but that doesn't stop the ladies mucking in with the lads. And it has to be done in all weathers. So are there any paid staff on the line?
Well, we do have very limited numbers of paid staff. The manager, of course, needs to be paid in order that we get the continuity that we need. And very occasionally we will use casual staff in order to make sure that all services function throughout the running season. And, of course, we make use of contractors where necessary.
These contractors are running things for a very different side of the railway. The Epicurean Express dining train, an occasional event held on an evening in high summer. There isn't really room to prepare dinner in the diner on the 2-foot 6 gauge. So the diners get a train ride from Llanfair to Castle Carinion, halfway along the line, and then enjoy the view over the Welsh hills while the professionals do their stuff.
Well, what Peter was saying last year, I could go easy on Peter's with the sprouts.
Homemade soup, roast turkey with all the trimmings, chocolate souffle, cheese, celery, coffee.
Yeah.
Cheers. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
Cheers.
And on the Welshpool and Llanfair, there's always variety on the menu. Because if the railway is to survive and thrive, it has to set out to appeal to its customers and make them feel they're enjoying themselves. Entertainment may be the name of today's business, but once it was very different. The railway was built to serve farming country, and for 50 years it carried coal and feed and fertiliser to the farms up the valley, and sheep and cattle down to the market at Welshpool. At first, the line was worked by the old Cambrian Railway. In 1923, that was taken over by the Great Western, and in 1948, it became part of British Railways, still with its 2 original steam locomotives and wooden wagons. Memories of those days are getting rather faint, but some of the old railwaymen still live locally. Driver Neville Evans remembers his early days on the Welshpool and Llanfair footplate in the depths of the Second World War.
I came as a fireman in January 1942.
Must have been some experience to work this line.
Oh, it was, yes, after come. I was a fireman in Llanfair first, then Alderstry, and then I came here, which we alternated around. We had 5 jobs, you see, and we part main line and then 1 week on this, which was a big different holiday line to us. It was really.
It was a good turn.
Yeah, good turn, 8 o'clock in the morning, bar Monday, which was 4 o'clock. Like, we had the steam raise in the morning. And
So what was it like, working the trains up the line?
oh, it was nice. We enjoyed it, like, you know, it was totally different from the main line, like. We were on our own, more or less. We stopped where we wanted to do this. It goes on all unofficial to the... where we stopped where if a farmer wanted us to pick some wool sacks up or drop some feeding stuff off, we'd stop and do it, like, you know. And that was a regular thing at the Larvin crossing. We used to always drop his stuff off, like.
At the Welshpool end, the light railway finished up alongside the standard gauge main line at a place known as Smithfield, where animals and goods were transshipped. To get there, it had to run right through the middle of Welshpool town at street level. And because it was a light railway, it was an intimate part of the town scene, with no walls, gates or fences. That used to create all kinds of hazards.
We used to go across at Church Street, but just before there was a narrow opening where you used to get the farmers' trucks and cars all parked across, which wasn't too good. And then there was the school children with the guard who used to have to stop them jumping on the van.
After coming across Church Street, we come very close to the houses, and there's a lady there, an old lady. There was a fence, and she used to put a clothesprop on the fence, which was hanging over. The line would be over the railway, so we'd have to stop and go and knock the door or blow the whistle. She'd come and shift the clothesprop, take the clothes off the line. Like. But the worst, I think, was where the drizzling rain and that sort of weather, where the grass was going like, we'd run the grass down, it'd be like grease on the rails, like, and we couldn't go, slip to a stand, or we couldn't stop it. Because it wasn't vacuum fitted, you just had the brake engine on the brake on the engine and the guardsman's brake. Like. And then there was one occasion we went up Springbank on a bad morning, such as it is now, drizzling rain, of course the grass was coming up. Then towards the latter end, the grass was getting bad under the rails, and we come to a halt on Springbank, and we came backwards right down over New Drive. And there was a drove of cattle, Frisian cattle going across, and they just parted, and we went through them without damage, and we stopped at the stopboard.
The old Welshpool and Llanfair struggled on into the 1950s, while traffic dwindled and losses mounted, until on Saturday the 3rd of November 1956, the last train ran. then all fell still. Yet behind the scenes, a group of enthusiasts was already discussing how the line could be got going again, as a tourist attraction, and as a unique part of the railway heritage. Ken Fenton is chairman of what has become the Welshpool and Llanfair Light Railway Preservation Company.
Well, when British Rail were operating this railway until 1956, and then when they closed it, there were a group of enthusiasts who were very sorry to see it close, and led by a Mr. Morris from London, they formed a society to try and reopen it, and it went ahead from there.
It actually took over 6 years before trains could start running again.
When the negotiations were rather long-winded before we were able to lease the line, and in that time the undergrowth was springing up and we were getting saplings coming up between the rails. There were 9-foot trees through parts of the track, so there was quite a lot of work to be done. The local people didn't really think it would ever really get off the ground, I don't think, and the immediate problem we had was that the railway, of course, originally used to run right through the centre of Welshpool to the main line station on the far side. But the local council were opposed to the preservation company having that section of line, and British Rail would not lease it to us.
Since those days, circumstances have changed. So, what are the chances now of ever reopening through the town?
It's difficult to visualise crossing very busy main roads. And as we've accepted that for a number of years, and as a result, of course, we built a new station down in Welshpool.
The new station in Welshpool is a pressing need. When the line reopened in 1963, it did so in stages, from the Llanfair Corinion end, and it was July 1981 before narrow-gauge trains reappeared in Welshpool town. Or, to be more accurate, at Raven Square, which, despite its name, is right on the edge of the town. The original terminus was a mile further on, so the volunteers of the Preservation Company had to start from scratch, reclaiming waterlogged land, building platforms, laying loops and sidings. The next step is to provide proper waiting rooms, a buffet, toilets, and, thanks to a kind benefactor, the railway has been given a complete wooden railway station, in need of a little attention maybe, but very much of the period. It's actually the old Midland Railway Station at Erdesley, 60 miles away between Hereford and Hay-on-Wye. So now it has to be dismantled, carted, lock, stock and barrel to Welshpool, and then put up again. And there's sure to be some rotting timber to be replaced. Reconstructing the Welshpool and Llanfair is very much a long-term job, with every penny having to be struggled for. When it first reopened back in '63, no passenger trains had run for over 30 years. Stations had gone to rack and ruin. And of course, there were no passenger coaches, and only one serviceable locomotive. So the 60s and 70s were a time of slow restoration. A large-scale programme of work on locomotives and track was begun. A fleet of rolling stock was gradually built up, all second-hand, of course, some more successful than others. And there were natural hazards to cope with. Just a year after reopening, this bridge over the River Banway was badly damaged by floods. But with skilled work by the Royal Engineers and a massive volunteer effort, one stone pier was completely replaced with a new steel one. And 8 months later, the bridge was back in service. The programme of rebuilding and renewing makes for a running battle between two camps. On the one hand, the commercial side, keen to bring in more passengers and their money to keep the business going. And for that, they say, you need comfortable coaches, refreshment rooms, shops, car parks, all the paraphernalia of the tourist trade. On the other side are the railway purists, who want to preserve as much of the past as possible, with the emphasis on things for the enthusiast and any new developments kept strictly in character. They argue that if you let the line become just another tourist ride with no special history, people will stop coming to see it, especially as this area isn't on the main tourist beat. And they say, keeping volunteers has to be top of the agenda. With all these conflicting priorities, progress is bound to be steady rather than spectacular. Even then, some people are bound to disapprove of some things. And, as every member of the Preservation Company has a say-so in how it's run, the railway has had to become skilled in democracy and consensus politics. Luckily, turning the railway from a very basic goods line into a 100% passenger business is such a big job that there are still plenty of broad targets that everyone agrees on, as Ralph Cartwright explains.
Well, we have been thinking of the development of the whole railway. We would like to see that something happens at Welshpool in the near future, that Lambeth Station should also be developed. We have plans for viewing galleries so that people can see the locomotives. We want a much better shop and a much better restaurant and better facilities for our volunteers to sleep in and to accommodate them all together, in fact.
On the revenue side, the all-important question is how to carry as many passengers as possible in the most economical way.
Yes, passenger numbers rose sharply in the early years, and now they remain fairly steadily at about 45,000 passenger journeys a year. Our aim is to fill the trains rather than to extend the season at all, and I think that it's likely to remain round about this level of ticket sales for the foreseeable future.
The trick is to find ways of topping up the revenue from passengers without spoiling the character of the line.
Well, we are very good at passing the hat round, and that contributes towards it, but we are raising more and more money from our traffic as we put on more and more special events. Our marketing policy has been geared towards producing more revenue so that we can go ahead faster than we have done perhaps in the past.
And talking of special events, the jazz special seems to be well underway. This is a railway that must cater for all sorts. So, for a different age group, there's the odd television character who comes to lend a hand.
Bye-bye, children! Bye-bye!
The Welshpool in Llanfair may have its children's days, but even in more serious mood, it can sometimes look like Toyland. These coaches look for all the world like those German tin plate toys of long ago that nowadays fetch a small fortune at London sale rooms. And in fact, they are Austrian, and they were built 80 and 90 years ago. When the line reopened in the 1960s, it had carried no passengers for over 30 years and had no coaches at all. Thanks to a group of enthusiasts in the company, it struck up a friendship with the Zillertalbahn in the Austrian Tyrol, a line which has the same 2-foot 6-inch gauge. In 1968, the Zillertalbahn donated 4 surplus coaches to the Welshpool, followed by a 5th some years later. Now they lead a busy new life to the sound of Welsh music. The hunt for more locomotives was literally worldwide. Joan, an 062 tank, was built in 1927 by Kerr Stewart of Stoke-on-Trent for the sugar plantations of Antigua in the West Indies. She was repatriated in 1971, still with her balloon-style chimney and painted dark red. These modern-style coaches, also British-built, came from the closed Sierra Leone Railway in West Africa. So did this 262 tank engine, bought in 1975 and at present undergoing heavy overhaul. Meanwhile, Joan has been repainted bright blue. Nothing to do with politics, just the railway recognising that if you're in the entertainment business, it does no harm to be colourful. The Welshpool and Llanfair's search for locomotives has been governed by the line's vicious gradients, notably the 1 in 29 of Golfer Bank, straight out of Welshpool. That demands something that packs a good punch. But the search was made easier by the line's generous loading gauge, a point explained by Andy Carey, the line's general manager.
The Welshpool Railway was built as a full-scale branch line. It's never carried slate or minerals, but was built to serve the local community. In consequence of it having been built relatively recently in 1903, it has a large loading gauge, so our rolling stock is much bigger than most of the other great little trains. We also have some of the steepest banks as well. The worst climb is 1 in 24, only a short one, but we have a great deal of 1 in 29, 1 in 30. So our engines really do work hard to earn their living.
A prime result of this has been the acquisition of this superb 080 tank named Sir Drefaldwyn, Welsh for Montgomeryshire. Sir Drefaldwyn was built in 1944 in France to a German design for the occupying German army. After the war, it worked in Austria and came to Wales in 1969, its then cost of £1,200 fully covered by members' donations. This chunky Continental has proved an outstanding success. Its power is more than a match for the Welshpool's gradients, while its 8 coupled wheels, set very close together, give excellent adhesion, but can still round the sharpest curves. This monster will test the Welshpool loading gauge to the limit. She's much bigger and heavier than many a standard gauge engine. Belgian built in 1948, she was number 5 on the Joki-Oisten Railway in southern Finland. This is sister engine number 4 on its home territory, now Finland's best-known preserved railway. The Joki-Oisten closed commercially in 1972, and after 11 years of disuse, number 5 finally found her way to Llanfair Carinian. However, there's a lot to be done to bring her back into running order. So, meantime, it's a question of static display. But the firm favourite on the line is still number 2, the Countess, one of the line's 2 original locomotives, built for it by Bayer Peacock of Manchester in 1902. The other half of this duo, the Earl, is out of service, awaiting heavy overhaul. Countess wears the traditional lined black livery of the Cambrian Railway, which first operated the line, and her dowager-like silhouette seems to grace the Welsh border country in just the manner of an old and dignified Edwardian lady. A day's work for the Countess begins with lighting up, just as it has throughout her life. Dry wood, small coal and oily rags to get the fire going. These days it's a job for volunteers, like everything else on the railway. Yet this simple job has always needed a bit of basic training. Driver Ron Bradshaw remembers what happened the first day he tried it, as a lad of 17.
It was the first Monday that I ever fired on it, and as Neville said, you booked on at 4 o'clock on a Monday morning, and there was 2 engines. Well, they were swapped about once a fortnight, because that Monday I was a green lad there, and the engine was cold, and I had to light it up and get steam for when the driver came. I think it was at 6:30. When the driver came, there was not an ounce of steam. The fire was black, and he couldn't do nothing with it because I think a mess I'd made of it, and because it was Welsh steam coal, which was a soft coal as we call it, and we eventually got off the shed at 10:30 to go up for the first trip, which should have been about 7:30. Because I believe those days the regular firemen, they got wood stacked about there in their own secret places for lighting the engine up on a certain Monday. I hadn't got anything.
Today's volunteers are far too aware of their responsibilities for that to happen again. So, once steam is up, the Countess is ready for another journey along the line. The Countess usually has a driver and a fireman. But the Welshpool is an equal opportunities railway, and sometimes one of the crew may be a lady. Margaret Murray is in no doubt which her favourite engine is.
This one. She's my favourite. When I first came, this one wasn't in steam, and it was being overhauled. When it was completed, I was off the footplate through ill health, and everyone went round saying what a special engine it was and how it sorted the men from the boys, and I was very apprehensive the first time I fired it. And by luck or whatever, I had a very good day, and I fell in love with it on the spot. And this is my favourite, and I think it always will be.
When she first came to the railway, Margaret had no idea she would end up on the footplate.
I came originally to do workshop work, and they said, have you ever been out on the footplate? I said no, so they said go on the middle train and see what you think. I quite enjoyed it. The next day there was no trainee, so I went out as the trainee, so I wound up on the footplate roster as well. And I've since qualified as a fireman, and I've gone on to learn to drive the diesel.
She finds the biggest asset down on the line is a sense of humour.
You get personality clashes here like anywhere else, but I don't think anyone's ever discriminated against me for being a woman. You haven't got to be too sensitive. You'll get called names in the heat of the moment and they don't mean it. You'll get silly nicknames. You'll hear some strange language. You may even use it yourself. It's all part of the fun. I would recommend it to anybody, because even if you don't want to get dirty, there are loads of other jobs that need doing, such as working in the shop and tea bar, where you stay fairly clean and meet the public. Or you can go out and do heavy track work. You can run the locomotives, you can work in the workshop, you can paint, you can line out engines. There's any number of things need doing. I work in the workshop on cleaning and tidying up duties. I do a little bit on the machine tools, and I tend to be the one that keeps them clean. And I also fire steam locomotives and drive the diesel. And I do the minutes for 2 of the committees that we run here.
Signalling is, of course, a skilled job, and a signalman must pass an exam before he is allowed to take control. A bus driver by trade, volunteer Steve Davidson joined the Welshpool Railway in 1974. He's had plenty of time to learn the working of his signal box.
Yes, it has to conform to Department of Transport regulations, and an inspector, our inspector, can come down and inspect the workings of the signal box if he so wishes. This signal box was built by the Preservation Company in the 1960s. The way we run the railway is that this signal box also acts as a control for the whole line, the control being done by telephone messages. Obviously each station's the point levers are controlled locally, but here all the points and signals for this station area are controlled from this signal box, and by pulling the levers I can set the road for the train to come out of the loop or the main. The signals are fully interlocked with the points, so I can't sort of set the points one way and the signals for the train to go the other. They are fully interlocked.
Of all the work to be done on the railway, the most basic has to be looking after the track. It's pick and shovel gang work, with little time to enjoy the Welsh scenery, and you're very lucky if you strike fine weather. The line's general manager, Andy Carey, is on site for major works.
Well, we take a complete week each autumn after the end of services to relay a lengthy section of track or do a major job like the level crossing we're tackling this year. Once this job is finished tomorrow, we shall be relaying part of the line up by Castle Corinium. We're at Delartham Crossing here. The level crossing was last replaced in 1968. We've just pulled all the old track out, cleared the tarmac out the way, and we're now getting it deep enough to take the new track, which has slightly thicker sleepers. We've shortly put the rails across, get it ballasted and levelled, and tomorrow morning the council will come and tarmac it. 2, 3, hey! 2, 3, hey!
Car coming down. You'll have to wait.
2, 3, hey! Out again, 2. The problem with road traffic is obviously that we don't actually close the roads while we're doing this, because we only actually need very short occupation. Most of the locals know what we're up to after quite a short time and take it easily, but we do have the problem of just constructing a temporary road surface at frequent intervals. We've got about 15 or so people here at the moment. We provide catering on site for tea and coffee and lunch. We all dine in the Black Line in the evening, so it makes a very good social event, quite apart from getting lots of work done for the railway.
With new track down and the roadbed filled in, the district's traffic returns to normal and the volunteers head for the pub. So, Galathin Crossing should be good for another 20 years and ready for all the varied traffic that today's Welshpool and Llanfair Railway runs over it. The jazz special is finally nearing its destination. It could become a regular feature. It's great fun, good publicity, and it brings the customers in. And of course, bringing the customers in is what it's all about, always provided that it doesn't destroy the character of the railway. The Welshpool and Llanfair has had every bit as big a job to tackle as the other Welsh narrow gauge lines, but it hasn't had the big resources and widespread publicity of some. So, on this friendliest of lines, developments have been steady rather than spectacular, with a great deal to be done yet, while the day-to-day running of the line goes on. And for the atmosphere of the line, that's a good thing. This is Welsh border country. As we said before, things change slowly here.